All right, it's 10 a.m. We'll call the Tourist Rooming House Committee to order. I'm going to do the roll call here myself. For our voting members, which was approved by County Board, Tweed Schuman. Here. Stacy Hessel. Chris Rusk.
Here.
Phil Neese. Gary Nathan. Matt Dale. Cheryl Treeland. Chris Vaselli.
Here.
Martin Hanson.
Here.
Ryan Carey.
Here.
Laura Rusk.
Here.
Ginny Chybeck.
Here.
For our non-voting members, Matt McKay. Jay Kozlowski, myself here. Eric Wellauer.
Here.
Rick Peters. Doug Morotek. Julia Lyons.
Here.
Brian DeVries. Andy Alvarado. And Julie, what's your last name? Julie McCullough. Let the record reflect we do have a quorum of our voting members. Pledge of Allegiance. Do we get a flag in here yet, Alex? He's got a flag. All right. I pledge allegiance to the And then just another note for those that are in the room, you will have to use your mic. There's a little icon in the middle of your microphone that has the voice waves. So to talk and so that we can get the recording, you can hear it on Zoom, you'll have to use the microphone button there. Certification of compliance and open meeting law.
Let the record show that this meeting has been noticed to the public and news media as required by section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
Thank you. Next, we'll do introductions. We'll just kind of go around the room. For those that don't know me, I'm Jay Kozlowski, Sawyer County Zoning and Conservation Administrator, kind of spearheading this Tourist Rooming House Ad Hoc Committee with other department cohorts. Next, we're going to have kind of the election of officers for those that are voting members. If you're interested in being one of those officers, certainly throw your name in the hat for that. Otherwise, for those non-voting members, just say your position here at the county, and we'll just go around the horseshoe here.
My name is Julie McCollum, and I'm health officer of Sawyer County.
Good morning. My name is Ryan Carey. I'm a practicing attorney in Hudson, Wisconsin, where my wife and I live with our 4 children, and we also have a cabin on La Couture. Thanks for having me.
Laura Rusk, Chairman, Town of Hunter, and also I'm a member of the original short-term rental committee.
Sheriff Doug Morotek. I am a non-voting member.
Stacy Hessel, Sawyer County Board.
Eric Wellauer, Sawyer County Sanitarian, non-voting member.
Matt McKay, Sawyer County Environmental Health, Tourist Rooming House guru, I guess, if you will, for Sawyer County. Non-voting member.
I'm Lisa Horton. I'm an elected official deputy filling in for the clerk today.
Tweed Schuman, Sawyer County Board Chairman, La Couture Tribal Governing Board Secretary Treasurer.
Cheryl Treeland, Treeland Resorts, retired President Chippewa Floyd's Resort Association, President, Vice President, past of Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau, and past member of the last committee.
Julia Lyons, Health and Human Services Director.
Brian DeVries, GIS Specialist.
Phil Neese, Vice President of Sawyer County Lakes Forum and President of Friends of the Lake. Also a member, a member of the town of Hayward's Planning Commission and the town of Bass Lakes Planning Committee. And I was on the previous committee that met in 2018 or 16, whatever. So, and I'm a voting member. So,
Ginny Chybeck, Town of Round Lake Plan Commission. I'm also a member of the Town of Round Lake Water Testing Committee.
Andy Alvarado, County Administrator.
And then those online that are voting members, do you want to do introduction of yourself as well, please? We'll start with Chris.
Hi, Chris Vaselli, and my husband and I own and operate Northwest Sanitary.
right, go ahead, other Chris. Sorry about that.
Chris Rusk, District 11, Sawyer County Board.
And Martin?
Martin Hanson. I'm a retired professional engineer, practiced in water resource engineering and transportation engineering, primarily highways. I'm a member of several boards in the local area and treasurer for the Round Lake Property Owners Association. I'm the president of our HOA association where my summer residence is in Sawyer County, and also a member of Sawyer County Lakes Forum. And the town of Round Lake Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you. That's kind of our introductions. We'll now open it up for election of officers. As this is an ad hoc committee, we'll need to elect a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. The secretary is basically as a minutes keeper role. I'd prefer not to do them if someone's more versed in minute taking. That would be greatly appreciated. I do not believe the secretary needs to be a voting member, but the chair and vice chair would be specifically of the 12 voting members that were approved by county board, and then those voting members would be the also ones voting for the election of officers. So I'll turn it over to
Jay, thank you. I'd like to nominate Ginny Chabek, hope I'm saying that right, as our chairman of the Tourist Rooming House Ad Hoc Committee.
I'll second that.
Yeah, do you want to take over then, Lisa, as far as the election?
So I will now open the floor of nominations for the position of chair of the Tourist Rooming House Committee. A person receiving a majority vote of members entitled to a seat shall be declared elected. This vote shall take place by silent voting. If no majority is reached, balloting shall continue, including all nominees until a majority is reached. At this time, I will open the floor for nominations for the position of chair. Do I hear any nominations?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll nominate Jenny Chabek as Tourist Rooming House Ad Hoc Committee Chair.
I'll second that.
Do I have any further nominations for the position of chair?
I'll nominate Cheryl Treeland.
I don't want to do it. I've got too many committees. I'm not down. I'm trying to retire.
This is the third and final call for nominations for position of chair. We've got Ginny so far. We have one candidate nominated, and having no further nominations, I will call for a unanimous vote for candidate Ginny Chabek for the position of chair. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries without negative vote. Congratulations. I will now open the floor for nominations for the position of vice chair of the Tourist Rooming House Committee. A person receiving a majority vote of members entitled to a seat shall be declared elected. This vote shall take place by silent voting. If no majority is reached, balloting shall continue, including all nominees, until a majority is reached. At this time, I will open the floor for nominations for the position of vice chair. Do I hear any nominations?
I would like to nominate Phil Neese. Is so wanting to.
I'll second that.
Okay. We have one candidate. Oh, do I have any further nominations for vice chair? And this is the third and final call for nominations for the position of vice chair. Okay, so we have one candidate nominated. In having no further nominations, I will call for a unanimous vote for candidate Phil. Let me see. Neese, sorry, for the position of vice chair. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries without negative vote. Now I will open the floor for nominations for the position of secretary of the Tourist Rooming House Committee. A person receiving a majority vote of members entitled to a seat shall be declared elected. This vote shall take place by silent voting. If no majority is reached, balloting shall continue, including all nominees until a majority is reached. At this time, I will open the floor for nominations of the position of secretary. Do I hear any nomination?
Could I have a point of order? The other committee last time, we had the county, this is an ad hoc committee of the county board. And the last time through, the county clerk was the secretary and attended the meetings. And it made for a much smoother operation and everything. And let's throw that out there, so.
Yeah, without having the clerk present today, I mean, we can certainly designate her as, yeah, right, exactly. We could designate her as secretary, as a, minute taker, record keeper. It would help me considerably, with already preparing the agendas and then having someone else at least take the minutes. I do think that's a good idea. I guess if Lynn, when she comes back, is unable to fulfill that role or that duty, we can reelect a secretary, but I think that's an appropriate route to go at this point. Yeah, probably.
I would make a motion that the county clerk be the secretary treasurer, it's not a secretary of the committee, and basing it on the fact that it is the official committee of the county board, so that should be a function of the county clerk.
I'll second that.
So in discussion, Jay, then would the deputy clerk fill in for the county clerk when she's not available? Okay, good with that.
So am I considered a nomination then, or is it?
Well,
just
Lynn's considered a
appointed?
nomination. You're filling in for Lynn. So
Yeah,
yes.
But I mean, do I have to finish the nomination? or-
Yeah, probably.
Okay, so we have one candidate nominated and having no, oh, I did forget that spot again. Do we have any further nominations? Third call, final for nominations. All right, so we have one candidate nominated. And having no further nominations, I'll call for a unanimous vote for the candidate county clerk, either Lynn Fitch or myself, Lisa Horton, for the position of secretary. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, motion carries without negative vote.
All right, so moving on, we do have our elections. I just talked to the chair, Ginny, and she would like me to continue kind of reading through the points of order as the agenda is presented. And then moving forward for our next meeting and agenda, Ginny will have that more of an official chairperson and working through the items here. So the next one we do have is public comments for those that are interested in giving public comments here today. Linda?
Linda Zilmer, 902 Holly Hill Lane, Birchwood, Edgewater property owner. And I want to thank all the staff who have gone through a lot of work to prepare materials so that this committee can be successful. And I want to thank you for giving your time to tackle an issue that has been kind of not fully addressed for a long time, or not completely addressed anyway. I do hope there is an opportunity as this committee starts for the county to also help inform the public at the ways that they can help identify issues with tourist rooming houses, whether it's the on-site complaint form that I believe is through Health and Human Services, through complaints to the Sheriff's Department, or additionally through public comments here at these meetings. For future agenda items, I would like to have this committee consider addressing a few things. One of them was touched on briefly during introductions as people identified who they were. There was recently an ethics committee meeting where a couple of complaints were considered, and I understand the county is going to undergo broadening how potential conflicts of interest are identified. So that could be financial, residential, holding multiple government roles. Also in discussion, where will these ordinances apply across the whole county, just in the non-tribal lands, or will there potentially be two sets of rules, some on the reservation and some in the rest of the county? Then also, there was recently a zoning ordinance amendment that was not successfully passed. And I think it could have gone better if there had been more public comment allowed during that drafting process. And in Washburn County, I know their meetings allow a public comment at the beginning like this and one at the end. And also at some point, look at the ordinances that exist for the county and also in comparison with the state statutes and administrative code to get clear on definitions and what is allowed and maybe what needs to be regulated. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to give public comment? Anyone online wishing to give public comment? Hearing and seeing no hands raised, we'll move on to item 3, which is kind of the talking points that the Wisconsin County Code Administrators had kind of come up with. The WCCA, Wisconsin County Code Administrators, also has an ad hoc committee formed for tourist rooming houses. I actually serve on this committee at the state level. And we've kind of identified some of the talking points and some of the issues that are out there. And the reason why I'm kind of sharing this with the committees today is just kind of get your mind focused around of, some of those hot button issues that we hear across the state. So the first is kind of as the workforce housing. And this was, available to everyone. I can read through this, but, several employers are seeking, workers that are having a tough time filling vacancies. Some due to the increased retirements and lack of young people entering the workforce. However, some of these recruitments are difficult due to long-term housing abilities. With the rental market that is out there, those houses that do go for sale are sometimes bought up by larger development firms that are now turning them into short-term rentals or tourist rooming houses. And those seeking workforce housing do not have the opportunity to fill that gap or that vacancy. Next kind of talking point that we identified was affordable housing. Commercial businesses are again buying up the affordable housings and converting them into short-term rentals. These entry-level homes or lower-priced properties are vital for younger families and people within the workplace. Long-term rental rates have increased dramatically, partly because of income potential in operating a similar use or short-term rental. Affordable housing is considered 30% of the household income, and in many areas, most of the housing and rentals are not considered affordable. Infrastructure, short-term rental properties were built as single-family dwellings, lacking commercial, sanitary, and building plans. Many of these rentals were built prior to 2005, so the Uniform Dwelling Code did not even exist when the houses were constructed. Several short-term rental properties are also accessed by shared driveways or easements or private roads. Some of these accesses are limited to the amount of use, the type of use, and who can use them. Consequently, a permit review process allows a county or municipality the ability to consider infrastructure's concerns like proper access and delineated parking, property lines and parking. Impacts on lodging, short-term rentals are critical across Wisconsin, whether it's for work, family gatherings, travel, or recreation. Motels, hotels, and resorts all have the following commercial building codes and obtain state license and plan approvals. A single-family dwelling operated in a similar fashion does not have that, which puts licensed commercial lodging facilities at a disadvantage at the cost of entry is much higher. Availabilities of properties. We kind of talked about this with the real estate market, where properties are sometimes only listed for a few days and are being sold over asking price. This is great to our local economy, retailers, realtors, and sellers. As more properties become converted into short-term rentals, people may be less likely to sell their property because the properties can generate some type of revenue stream and cover the cost of ownership and additional expenses. Recreation. Wisconsin is very fortunate to have diverse natural resources and abundance of recreation opportunities. Being good stewards of our resources is vital to the health and quality of the recreation they provide. Often short-term rentals are situated in locations to take advantage of these recreational opportunities. A short-term rental may not have negative impacts on the resource or other recreators if handled appropriately. However, if not regulated, careless renters can increase the risk of negative impacts. They can transfer aquatic invasive species, erosion, or just sheer amount of users on that local resource. Diversity, everyone would say that there's an incorporated city has substantial differences from an unincorporated rural area. One could also say that there are substantial differences between regions in Wisconsin from the south to the north or even the east to the west. Furthermore, there's often significant differences between properties located in the same county or area, waterfront versus non-waterfront, public sewer versus municipality sewer, public roads versus private roads, small versus large parcels. These differences can greatly affect the appropriate and particular uses in our area. For example, short-term rental near an existing resort would be a similar or compatible use to the surrounding land use. The diversity in the land use in each municipality is typically provided in their comprehensive plan, which is intended to allow for planned and orderly development. Again, the overall goal of the WCCA Short-Term Rental Committee is to increase awareness of these potential impacts and provide regulation opportunities for counties and local municipalities for this type of land use that they desire. I had also heard from our legal counsel that's kind of working behind the scenes on this right now. We're during the very early talking stages of this TRH committee during some of the, if anything is to come out into ordinance form or other regulations that this committee would want to enact. Obviously, we're going to have a legal review of this. And there are several other counties that are looking into what we're doing as well. So we're kind of a spearheader in this movement per se, as well as WCA, the Wisconsin County Administration or Association. They are actively watching us as well to see what comes from this committee. So that's kind of my talking points from not only the zoning administrator, but the WCCA. And I'll turn it over to item number 4 as kind of our TRH slideshow from Matt McKay.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here and being a part of this committee. Again, my name is Matt McKay. I work with Sawyer County Environmental Health. One of my roles is to kind of look at tourist rooming houses and making sure that they are licensed and do the inspections for those types of facilities. Bear with me one second as I pull up my screen. There we go.
Matt, 1 second while you're looking for that. Jay, you said that many counties are watching us on what we're going to do. Are there other counties that have a plan in place already? So we don't need to reinvent the wheel here. There's something we can.
Right. So there are some other counties that have plans in place. There's a very interesting one going on right now in Polk County, where they enacted a tourist rooming house ordinance, and now they find themselves in the mix of a lawsuit because some of the regulations that they put in go beyond specific Wisconsin state statutes. So they're ones that are watching us to see, we'll make sure we don't step the wrong way as well and potentially wind up in litigation. But there are others out there that are in the same boat as we are. So, for those that don't know the history, Sawyer County, started identifying tourist rooming houses, short-term rentals back in around the 2016, 2017 era. They enacted an ordinance in about 2018, which was then later rescinded. Now, the reasons of why it was rescinded, I couldn't speak specifically on that, but I think it was something to do with our corp counsel at that time told us that we couldn't regulate it to an extent and that it never was submitted to the towns for their review. So county board ended up rescinding that TRH ordinance. At that time, we were then kind of more of a, I'll call it wild, wild west scenario where there was very limited control outside of getting a tourist rooming house license from the health department. There are other counties that are in that same position right now where they don't have any rules or regulations from any other departments via the state health department and our health department acting as that agent of the state. There are others that have ordinances on the books. Some find them helpful, some find them very, tedious and cumbersome. So there are other counties that, anytime you form one of these tourist rooming houses and potentially come up with any type of ordinance and actions, there are other counties that are going to be interested to see what we do. So.
Thanks, Jay. Kind of added some of the stuff that I was going to mention as far as the history of tourist rooming houses in Sawyer County. But our goal here today is to try to address occupancy with tourist rooming houses. We get a lot of calls throughout the year in regards to complaints. And those complaints can vary from noise to parking issues to trespassing dogs going across property lines. You name it, we hear about it. It's hard for our department and ourselves to address those concerns, those complaints, because many of those complaints don't necessarily fall in the codes that we oversee and we enforce as an agent of the state. So therefore, and some of them could maybe possibly apply to our environmental health ordinances. But again, a lot of these are civil issues where the sheriff's department also gets called out to these types of complaints. And so our overall goal is to try to figure out where does the problem lie and how can we best address this all the way around. And so one of those situations is by looking at occupancy, and I'll talk a little bit more on how we look at occupancy currently and where we'd like to possibly go with that too. Throughout the years, the number of facilities that Sawyer County has seen for licensing has grown leaps and bounds. We started in 2018. When we took over from the state, we had about 275 facilities licensed that basically was turned over to us from the state. And since then, just grown. That first year, we did a real hard search for those properties that we knew were out there, but was not licensed. And so we found quite a few of them that bumped us up. In that first year, we added over 100 and 125 facilities. Much of that was through our efforts and also working with a company that identifies those short-term properties. Currently, as of 2023, we're at 563 licensed facilities in the county, and that's a minimal number. We feel pretty confident in that we have a majority of those facilities licensed. There are some that are still evading us, but we have that company that we work with to send letters to make sure that we do get them licensed, that they're all playing by the same rules. But what many people don't realize or know is that when somebody applies for a license, they could have multiple properties and they fall under one license. So if homeowner A has a home, they make that into a rental. Maybe a year later, the house next door comes up for sale. They buy that one, and then they want to make that into a rental, maybe on the opposite side. So they could have, as long as they're adjacent to each other, they could fall under one license. So we have many of those situations where somebody has multiple units on one license. And so you look at the bottom part of the screen there, you kind of break down as to where many of those rental properties fall in the different townships. And just a general map kind of showing where these facilities are located. Basically, it's all throughout Sawyer County, primarily on lake shores of our more popular lakes, such as Grindstone, Round Lake, but any bodies of water. But we're also seeing more increase of licensing for those that are just even rural, out in the middle of nowhere. There might be close to ATV trails or snowmobile trails, or also the Berkey system. So yeah, it's somebody has an opportunity to purchase a property and they make it into a rental, and they're doing very well. This is a company that we work with called Coast Compliance, also known as Granicus. We've worked with them for many years, and they do scan many different platforms out there, such as Airbnb, VRBO, and any of the other major ones. There's 50, 60 plus platforms, major platforms nationwide or worldwide, platforms that are out there. Where they don't scrub for is somebody that has their own website. Those are kind of a little bit harder, but we also work well with our townships, and they also inform us as well if they become aware of any facilities. If we don't have it on our roster, we will then send them a letter and make sure they get licensed. But also working with our realtors in the area when property changes hands, if those realtors find out that they're looking to operate as a rental, they're usually giving them the information that they need to get it licensed through us. Most people nowadays are realizing that they need to have a license, and they're searching that information out through our websites. But the nice thing about host compliance, they scrub all those platforms, and then they basically take the data that's on those websites and put it into a nice dashboard that we can then look up. So for example, under max sleeping capacity and or bedrooms there, you can see what they're offering that facility for. Like I said in the beginning, we handle a lot of different complaints. These just being some of the concerns that either we've heard about in the past, some of them are ongoing complaints that we get anywhere from neighbors seeing that possibly that the guests are over harvesting and taking too many fish, garbage cans being left out at the roadside all week long, and bears are getting into them, those types of things. Parking is a big one, where especially like this winter when we had so much snow, plows couldn't push it too far, and driveways were limited on the amount of vehicles and trailers that they could occupy. So we got vehicles on the road blocking easements and whatnot. But again, a lot of it comes down to occupancy. And so our goal is to try to see if we can't come up with a way to limit occupancy. And so here's some examples of facilities that are in our county where it kind of shows the extremes of the number of people that can stay in these facilities. So the one on the right where you have a 3-foot ceiling with queen size mattresses laid out on the floor. Now this is not allowed. So this was tried, and it was written up that they could not do this because you need to have a minimum of 7-foot ceiling. And so they could not get a variance from the state to allow this. And so we try to keep track through that platform or that company, the Granicus, to then monitor. We can go on and find their website, go on there and verify that, yes, they're not advertising this sleeping space. Again, the one on the left, this is one of 2 bedrooms that are laid out like this with multiple, I think this one room could sleep in excess of 12 people. And then there's a second room just like it. So I believe the facility overall could hold somewhere 25 plus people. So these, again, some of these are the extremes, but again, this is what we are seeing as we go into some of the facilities. And kind of a garage on the right side that was converted into a sleeping space, which this was okayed through. This was a new structure that was built and okayed by UDC building code, so that was allowed. But situations like on the left here, just big, larger bedrooms being placed with a lot of different, a lot of layouts for sleeping arrangements. So you're seeing bunk beds, multiple bunk beds in one room, and large bunk beds as well, where the bottom would be like a queen size, where with a single on top, or double queen bunk beds. On the right on this slide, we see this a little bit too, where they're utilizing a space in, say, the lower level of their facility, but would maybe be considered a rec room type layout or situation, and they're building in custom sleeping spaces. So this one on the right can house an extra 6 people. And then just, yeah, more examples. Here's another one. And so these properties weren't originally designed for this. And so that's why we want to have this discussion, is how do we best address this? And right now, what we use from our code that we use from Department of Ag, Trade and Consumer Protection under ATCP 72 for lodging code, is that they don't really define a sleeping space. And so it just says that the cubic footage of that room. So for, excuse me, For each individual adult, they are allowed 400 cubic feet. They must have at least 400 cubic feet per adult and 200 cubic feet per child. And so if you take an average bedroom of that's a 10 by 12, it's 900 cubic feet, you can see the breakdown. 2.5 adults and just under 5 children. So obviously we round down. But it's hard for us when we go into these places to know, are they really say, yeah, you got 4 beds in there, that has to be for children. We know that's not always happening. And so it's hard to enforce. It's hard to hold them to that, I guess, if you will. So with that, we've tried, what our thoughts are, and Eric will explain a little bit more about this, is coming up with a way to address occupancy based on septic sizing. And I guess at this point, I would maybe turn it over to Eric to explain a little bit more. If that's okay, Jay, I know we're skipping one spot on there, but
yeah, I think that's fine. And we can kind of, move that around. And what we're going to have kind of Eric discuss a little bit, I do want to still identify our pros and cons of TRHs in general, but when we've kind of ran through our list, departmental wise, throughout the county, a lot of the cons that are being brought up are from over occupancy. If you have more people staying at a structure, you have more parking on the roadways, you have more usage on the lake. People are, tend to be louder in larger groups. Everything is really kind of spent off of the number of people that are at that facility. So we've kind of come up and identified some ways that we can look at kind of a regulation standpoint for a number of occupancies. I'll kind of turn that over to Eric to address the sewer system size and capacity.
Jay, we had a couple questions here.
Can we get a copy of that emailed to us of what you just presented? Yeah. Okay.
Matt, can you go back a couple of slides? I want to look at that where you listed all the occupancy considerations back. One more. There you go. Is there anything there regarding law enforcement or EMS being overtaxed or overstressed by all these people in these units? Or is that coming up?
And then I think he runs the other.
One forward.
Right there. Yep. Because I know that EMS, ambulance, and our sheriff's department is really getting stressed by all these people in one, and this over occupancy. I'm just wondering if that's listed up there.
No, I don't believe I have that on there. Let's see, I'm reading through here. No.
Noise complaints would be addressed by the sheriff.
Noise complaints are the big thing that we receive, especially when there's quite a few people there, younger people, obviously with the intent to party and having late night parties. And when they're in an area where there's quite a few other residences around, the neighbors call in. That's been our biggest complaint and concern here in the past. For the most part, that's been our only concern that's been brought forward to us.
Excuse me. Where we got in a little bit of trouble in the previous committee was to address the sheriff that's behavioral problems. And we were trying partially within the ordinance to address behavioral problems, which is you can't do, and where we shouldn't have done. But part of that goes back to we need to look forward, whatever we come up with, that we be sure we don't try to do behavior of people, because whatever behavior it doesn't need to be in the ordinance, maybe against the law anyway. And so it's the sheriff's responsibility. So.
Are you, in reference to Phil just bringing this up, I have the minutes or the criteria from our original committee, and the same list that's up there of the problems is the same list of the recommended criteria by the original ad hoc committee to put in place. So there's a direct connection between the two for sure. That's where the complaints are coming from, and the same list is the criteria that was recommended by us in the first place.
Right. I think that is a great talking point to take home. But when we look at these issues at foot here, 99% of them stem from over occupancy. Where if you are only renting out to 6 individuals, you're probably not going to have the over harvesting of fish or the enforcement of boating activities. It's when you start getting into those 12, 16, sleeps 24. That's where it's a compounding problem to all the issues that we've identified. So that's where, at least from a department staff position, that's where we're looking at least trying to focus this committee to look at, the occupancy issues. It's our hope that if we are able to somehow limit occupancy on some of these TRH facilities, that a lot of the issues kind of go away with them. But at least that's my 2 cents. If there are any other questions, otherwise we'll kind of kick it over to Eric to kind of look at what we've identified via, Sawyer County staff wise for the occupancy concerns.
Just one question of Matt to clarify and make sure I heard that. If I had 3 homes I owned and they're all 3 separate places with short-term rentals, I only need 1 permit?
As long as those places are, as long as those places are adjacent to each other. We also have homeowners that might have one here on this lake and then another property 10 miles away. Then they would need separate licenses.
Okay.
But it's when they have a situation where, for example, have a homeowner that has bought 4 lots all adjacent to each other. He has put 3 homes, there's 3 structures on each of those, or 1 on each of those lots. But since they're all adjacent, technically we can, based on DACAP rules, we can license it as 1 unit or 1 facility.
I said, why wouldn't it be considered a resort then?
Right. And that is one of the things that I do want to address with this committee, probably not today, but in future agenda items and future meetings, that is something that we should probably look at as this TRH committee, is if we have a facility like that has, multiple rentals, and be it even on separate lots, is that really then viewed and defined as a resort? And that would probably be something that we would have to bring back to the zoning committee in order to propose a zoning ordinance amendment to have them, really get the requirements of being a licensed resort. And that would be through a conditional use permit process. Keep that on the back burner. We're going to definitely talk about that at some point.
On the licenses though, don't you have like the number of rooms that they have? So when you're saying defining a resort, it's not defined by the number of units, it's just defined by the number of bedrooms that you have. You might have like 1 to 49 or 50 to 99 or whatever on the licenses, unless they've changed it just recently.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so why? I don't know where the hangup is on a definition of a resort. I've read everything in the paper and all the stuff going on with it, and I don't understand the definition having to be defined.
Right. So, for example, a single tourist rooming house might have 5 bedrooms. In DACAP code, prior to, because this code dates back many, many, many years prior to the build of tourist rooming houses before they got so popular. It was, the lodging code was really designed for hotels, motels, and that those types of facilities. And so the tourist rooming house license is good for a facility that has 1 to 4 units, not necessarily number of bedrooms, because like that one might have 4 bedrooms, another one might have 3. We don't look at those structures with the number of bedrooms that they have. It's how many units. So if we have a small, well, like your facilities there, you have the condo or the larger building where you have, I don't know how many, say 20 rooms, I guess. That would fall, we have different levels of licensing for lodging. So it's the smallest being tourist rooming house, 1 to 4 units. Then you jump up to the next category, which is 5 to 30, 30 to 99, and so on and so forth. And so that's how we base our license on based on the number of units that they have.
And question for Jay and Matt. In that context, the zoning issue becomes more related to whether or not that's a commercial operation versus a residential operation, correct?
Yeah.
And if it's a commercial operation, then you have an opportunity to restrict where it's located if it's completely surrounded by homes, which most of these rentals are in residential neighborhoods. More than what a
To an extent, yeah. And it depends how deep you want to dive into the zoning ordinance to potentially fix those issues. But even within the residential recreational 1 or residential recreational 2 zone district in current zoning ordinance, you can apply for a conditional use permit to operate a quote unquote resort. So that would be kind of the zoning takeaway is that, you know, there are probably some amendments that are going to be needed within the zoning code if that is the recommendation from the TRH committee. That if you have a facility where you have, you know, 3 individual units on 3 separate lots, but it's the same license as a short-term rental, that you at that point are viewed as a resort and you need prior or further zoning approval. But with Act, which was it, 67, you know, the ability of counties to prohibit a conditional use permit become very difficult, where you need substantial evidence in order to deny that. So most of those scenarios that we're identifying most likely will receive a conditional use permit unless there's some crazy substantial evidence that would deny them. But that's where you could put potential conditions on those types of facilities that are doing multiple dwelling rentals.
Thank you.
Cheryl, did I fully answer your question?
I still don't understand the term resort, what the big deal is about calling something a resort or not. If you've got 3 that are out of 4 lots that are there, what a resort, you know, if you're saying a resort, typically you're going to have other recreational facilities and stuff, not 3 independent houses on 3 independent lots, but they're all licensed together. So I just don't understand the hang up on the term, the word resort. That's all.
Only one at a time, screen share.
And when Eric pulls that up, just going back to Cheryl's, I do want this committee to kind of address that. You know, we tried through, you know, a zoning ordinance amendment process to look at definition of resort and kind of clean up our multi-dwelling development language. It was denied at town level. So, you know, as future agenda items, which we have down here on our current agenda, that is something that I do want to, you know, somewhat task this committee with coming up with a recommendation to then get the zoning committee to, you know, to further make those definitions of a resort. And if those are the scenarios where you are a resort, you know, quantify that as to what additional, you know, pre-approval processes or conditional use permit applications you would need in order to do that type of use. But right now, the current ordinance needs fixing. So zoning ordinance, that is.
I'm live here. Okay. One of the ways that we thought of to control occupancy of TRHs is through septic systems. Many of the structures that are used for TRHs were originally built for residential purposes. ATCP DATCAP requires water supply and waste disposal for all tourist rooming houses. And if public utilities like a city sewer is available, the sizing for occupancy is based on sleeping rooms. And as Matt was talking about, cubic feet. So that was a misnomer from the first generation of tourist rooming house ordinance. There was discussion that number of occupants in a structure would be based on cubic feet. Shortly after all of that happened, I was able to find a section in DATCAP 7210 up on the screen here. Also I'm old school with paper, so this would be in the last page, yellow highlighting, 7210 parent 5. It just basically states that if you have a a tourist rooming house that's not on city sewer, the system shall be located on the premises and designed and constructed and operated with another state agency, DSPS 382 and 383. Basically, from there's two separate ways of designing septic systems. One being residential, the other one being non-residential or commercial. So with that, residential sizing is based on 2 persons per bedroom maximum. So each bedroom, most common septic system designs for plumbers would be a 2 or a 3 bedroom home. So that would be 4 or 6 person maximum occupancy for residential sizing. Utilizing the appendix in 383 for non-residential sizing, I did find a section labeled hotel, motel, or tourist rooming house. It does not indicate per room. It states per bedroom, it states room, and it's 65 gallons per day. So the charts, I don't want to get too in depth with the charts, but on the paper copies, I've got a couple tables with different color codes. Utilizing clever math or sizing, we're able to come up with possibilities of changing design flow of residential to non-residential use with a maximum of 3 persons per bedroom for tourist rooming houses instead of 2 persons per bedroom. So those tables indicate number of bedrooms and sizing and design flow for situations to maximize occupancy based on septic systems utilizing these formulas. So,
and just to, kind of reiterate some, that Eric's talking about, I mean, because right now in the state, there's quite a few other counties that are doing different types of sizing. Some are strictly to residential where they're only allowing 2 persons per bedroom. There are some that are using a 2 persons per bedroom plus 2, which is found nowhere in code. There are many like us that have been waiting from a state level to codify tourist rooming houses and have the state basically come down and quantify how many individuals can stay as part of a TRH sizing. And we've been waiting for the state to help counties out for quite a few years with no help on that front. So that is where we kind of came up with a meet in the middle type of approach, where if you were to restrict, the 563 identified TRHs now back to a residential sizing, I mean, you're taking quite a bit of their, occupancy out from under them. And I think you're going to see the TRH market completely crash because those that are on a 2-bedroom sewer system are only going to be able to rent to 4 people, and they're just not going to make, the kind of economic growth that they would need to sustain. So that's why we kind of have this meet in the middle approach with using code that's already available in DSPS or SPS 83 in the appendix would really equivalent to 3 individuals per bedroom sized on their original sewer system. So if you had a 2-bedroom sewer system, you could rent to 6 occupants. If you had a 3-bedroom sewer system, you could rent to 9 occupants. If you had a 4-bedroom sewer system, you could rent to 12 occupants. And, again, from a zoning and conservation department standpoint, that's one of our goals as the department is to, have that health, safety, and welfare of the general public. So that's where we're looking at, focusing this TRH committee to look at that occupancy sizing so that we're not, contributing to groundwater contamination, surface water contamination, and making sure that we do have adequate sewer system sizing.
Eric, quick question. Do you have any idea what the current compliance would be for those 563 or whatever?
Matt and his team helped fill out a Excel spreadsheet, and we've tackled maybe half. And do you know the latest on that? I would guess 60-70% are not in compliance or more. Yeah. So the compliance would be septic system sizing for residential purposes not exceeding their residential design. So whether it's a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom. Another alternative that wasn't mentioned would be to have the property owner increase the components of the septic system to accommodate the number of individuals for residential design.
Does age of the system factor in?
No. Not yet.
So does everyone agree that the initial bedroom setup with two per bedroom is not sustainable to a tourist rooming house owner? I don't know if I agree with that, Jay. I don't know where you heard it from, but.
So I guess the question to ask would be, is the use of wastewater or the use of water in that facility the same as a residence? And if the answer is yes, then we should stick with the residential design flow. If folks living in a house are on vacation, not doing laundry daily, maybe not doing dishes as often, maybe not bathing as often, they're at the lakes swimming or whatever. This was, as Jay was mentioning, is a method to not be as restrictive as residential, but at the other end, not allowing 22 people to stay in a 4-bedroom house. So that's what we have for now.
Just from observation, at least in the town of Bass Lake, that's what's occurring. I mean, I can show you, we got some prime examples. It's the far out landers, but there's as many as 20, 25 to 30 people staying, and at $6,000 a week. That's a good way for people to afford to do it. But then to provide health, safety, and welfare that we're supposed to be concerned with, and protecting the resource also, because there's no way you can flash a septic system with that many people, and that was designed for a 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom house, that it's gonna operate properly. So
I'm also wondering with, if you force a compliance issue out there where we know that there's a large percentage that isn't compliant, we're looking at, what do? We have a massive construction project going in place to retrofit all these places, or we have to scale them back?
And that is, a valid concern, because, even with what we're proposing as potential, the occupancy for the 65 gallons per day, which is 3 persons per bedroom, an individual could come in and upgrade their sewer system and make it a 7 or 8 bedroom sewer system. Now you're back into the, 24 occupants are allowed. Now, a lot of that, at least on the lake shore, is going to be limited to sheer area. You're not going to be able to fit, a 8-bedroom sewer system on a, 100 by 200 lakeshore lot. If you did have a larger lot, you could, see that, but the sheer cost of installing that system, I think, is going to be prohibitive to some of these individuals. That's just my 2 cents on it, but we've at least kind of identified an out that we can use a backdoor approach to regulate occupancy based upon sewer system sizing, which is already available in current state codes. But ultimately, it's this committee that's kind of tasked with looking at these issues and trying to move that needle forward one way or the other without getting in a foul of other state statutes that are out there that prohibit certain items. I'll go on record and say it right now, because I've seen it in other counties. I would not recommend that all TRHs should be approved a conditional use permit. You're talking 563 conditional use permits coming through the zoning committee. I would need at least another 2 staff members in order to accomplish something like that. And again, with Act 67, those are going to be very hard to deny. And you're going to have public hearing processes in this room to the zoning committee of people saying, well, the neighbor let their dog out and he pooped on my side of the property. And so, they had music going to 10:30 at night, and I had to call the sheriff on them. And those are matters that, that we necessarily can't, regulate through a conditional use permit process. And then, just to, what other types of conditions are you going to put on these TRHs? So, as from a zoning administrator standpoint, I would not be in favor of listing, TRHs, that all TRHs would need a conditional use permit. Now, those that are operating as multiple dwelling units that would be potentially defined as a resort, then yes, I think those do and should merit the consideration of a conditional use permit. But as a single dwelling being rented as a TRH, I would not be in favor that they would seek a conditional use permit process.
Well, I'm sure the zoning administrator will find 2 or 3 people for you. No problem.
Would it be possible to turn around if you went to the 3 per bedroom, that you would phase it in, that they would be given a warning, and then you'd have a period of time, say maybe within 5 or 6 years, if you're going to have 4 bedrooms that you want to rent, so you want to rent for 8 people or whatever, that they could upgrade that 2-bedroom and they've got X period of time to do it, or they lose their license?
Yeah, I think that's how we would have to do it, because people that are staying there this summer right now, many are going to be booking for next year. So we got to give the homeowner that opportunity to inform their guests that, hey, starting next year or whenever it's implemented, that they're going to have a year to adjust. First year is when we go out and do our inspections, we'll be educating and informing them of this. They'll get that ahead of time too, but just reminding them that this is the new change. And then, so it's going to be probably just a 3-year implementation for this, between educating, implementing, and for like the first, it'll be the 2nd year issuing a warning, 3rd year citation kind of thing. Or license, or whatever we deem appropriate measures.
The recent sales that I've seen gone through, it's not Phil with 1 place or a guy with 2. A lot of them are development companies, and it's not mom and dad trying to get a few extra bucks. It's pretty good return on your investment, I guarantee you, even at the prices of lakeshore property. And I don't think we should ever let the dollar amount get in the way of it when they're getting $4,000 to $6,000 a week. I'm sorry. I think they can afford to expand their septic in a reasonable amount of time.
I also want to follow on Jay's comment about the conditional use permit. I think that one of our driving, goals of this committee should be to come up with something that reduces conflict, because that's really the problem that we're seeing across the board. The conditional use process in itself is conflict. You're basically bringing people in, neighbor against neighbor. And, that should not be our goal. Our goal should be to have something that's enforceable and that is reasonable and that can be applied in, very few words. That's what I think our goal should be.
And then, Martin, you have your hand raised there. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm not sure I'm in favor of your proposal for the increasing the bedroom, the occupancy of bedroom sizes. From an engineering perspective, those standards were created based on capacity of septic systems for residential use. And I think just because you change the name from residential to temporary dwelling house doesn't change the science and engineering of those septic systems. So I'm not convinced that arbitrarily increasing them by 1 person in the bedroom is sound engineering practice in order to protect the environment.
Yeah, you were breaking up a little bit, but I think I kind of heard the gist of it there, that switching to commercial sizing, really doesn't accomplish anything. But ultimately, I would say probably 90% of these tourist rooming houses aren't available for year-round rental. So, I mean, there is a break on the sewer system as opposed to, sheer residential sizing that would be used year-round. At least that's our thoughts, and that's how the state has basically broken it out within their appendix charts.
Yeah, I think I understand that, but similarly, if I was a residential owner, you can see I want a smaller sewer system because I'm only there 1 month of the year, even though it's a residence.
Question for Eric on the same lines. I think where we're going with that, what is not the worst thing you can do. You're the expert, and Chris is on to shocking your system or using it heavily and then not using it heavily is heavily is probably the worst thing you can do for your septic system to balance it out. Is that true or not true?
That's not recommended, but there are many things that can ruin a system. One other thing that came to mind was turnover day, Saturday. You're going to wash 22 beds of laundry and all that. Some places utilize their laundry facilities on site and some take them other places. So there's many things not taken into consideration and many differences from site to site. So it's hard to answer all of those questions, but those aren't recommended. No.
But it'd be reasonable to say that when you have an unbalanced system in use, that probably is harder on the system to be more effective in general.
True.
Okay.
Question and a comment. I guess the question is any consideration been given to setting it something less than 3 in between 2 and 3? My point is, I think, is 5 people in a 2-bedroom reasonable? Sure, seems like it. Is 9 in a 3-bedroom small place? I don't know that it is. I'm not necessarily saying one way or the other, but I feel like those numbers can get big quite easily based upon the sizing using a multiple of 3. So that, I guess that's my question. But my comment would be, I also feel like this to some degree is like setting a speed limit. We're doing it, we hope that people abide by it, but we know there's people are going to push it. So you set it at 3, you're going to have those people, they're going to violate it by saying, well, I mean, that person wasn't staying here. They were just here for the day type of thing. There's gonna be a lot of that, I think. So just a comment.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. At least from what we've initially talked about, if we go to this, commercial sizing, there would be an affidavit that you would need to complete through the zoning department, which then gets recorded on the deed that you're switching from a residential sizing to a commercial sizing, which then would be, a shared database with Matt and his staff for the licensing of TRHs. So if you are still advertising that your 3-bedroom sewer system can sleep 12, you're in violation. First year education, second year, you get your strike, your warning. If you're still advertising that you're sleeping over your occupancy allowances, revocation of license. And then if you're still renting after that, then there's, I would assume there's processes through citations and state levels that if they're renting without their license, that, there's pretty severe consequences to that. I don't know if there's any other ideas as to, how to address, the issues at hand. I know we've kind of jumped back and forth on our agenda topics. I don't know if there's other, I think a lot of people understand the pros of, tourist rooming houses. I mean, Sawyer County is a tourist-based community. We need those types of uses to hold our tourists. There's no doubt about that. Everyone understands that. But it has to come with some type of, I guess, mitigation or some type of at least, compatible use to our residents that live here year round and those that are, weekend warrior vacationers. So, I mean, we understand the cons. I mean, those were identified as part of the last TRH. We've identified some of them through Matt's slideshow and the talking points of WCCA. We understand, where the pros are at, and it's really kind of, okay, how do we make a happy medium between those with, still allowing, our tourists to recreate here, spend their money, collect the sales tax income that the county and towns receive. But at the same time, looking at the resources, the neighbors, and again, drinking water and groundwater from sewer system sizing aspects. And the pumpers, right, Chris?
There's one overview that, and it's come up lately in several different venues. And I don't know if there's anything we can do about it or should do about it, maybe. But we need to keep in the back of our mind that we've gone from resorts to lakeshore owners. I'll use Coudray because I'm most familiar with that one. In the day, there was 47 resorts. Today, there are 2. But over time, it's been replaced with, I will call, probably 50 short-term resorts. Okay. And And not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but I think we have to keep in mind that what we have and part of our problem is that these are, of course, being put in residential areas of a commercial use. And all of a sudden, you know, grandma and grandpa had their cabin, and now next door they have a rental and they have a neighbor or a renter every week, a different renter. Of course, in my other committee assignment, because I live next door to a rather large short-term rental, but and I never had a problem with it, but it comes back to the good news about having a short-term rental next to you. They're only there for a week. If your neighbor's not too nice a guy, you got to live with him till he dies or he sells. So there is a little back and forth there. So anyway. Thank you.
And I guess at that point, if there's, not any other questions, we can talk and discuss, future agenda items that you would want to see on the agendas. And then also future meeting dates, because I know it's hard, and we have 12, voting members of this committee, and it's hard to get 12 people in the room on the same day and the same time together. I understand that. So I guess, as far as future agenda items, I mean, we already looked at, exploring, the TRH, sizing and, commercial sizing a little bit more, definition of, resort, and seeing whether or not we want to, form and task, this committee with coming up with recommendations to zoning committee for a definition of resort. I mean, are there any other, future agenda items that this committee wants to see as we move forward?
I would like to see if there are examples out there of ordinances that have been successfully written and haven't been challenged or are enforceable that we could use as a starting point.
Yeah, I don't know if you already had it, but in terms of the whole resort issue, I'm not sure in my mind it's clear when the 3-lot example gets converted to a one license issue to a resort. So if you could give us at the next meeting some background as how a company might transition from short-term rental into a resort situation, what triggers that? It helps to me. Thank you.
Any other future agenda items? If anyone wants to kind of look at, I got those 3.
So Jay, do one of those include the number per bedroom that will be allowed per septic system? I really like Ryan's idea there that we need to take a closer look at that. Because I think some people will try to abuse that. And I like somewhere in between what you mentioned. I think these tourist rooming houses can be sustainable, even profitable, by restricting their numbers somewhat. Because I think we need to err on the side of the environment versus profitability.
Yeah, and we'll definitely, we've had some departmental talk as to how that may look in the future. And we can, start preparing that more, because, if this committee didn't even want to go down that road, I didn't want to task Eric or myself or Matt to further go down that rabbit hole if that wasn't going to be perceived well. We've had some thoughts and ideas as how that end result may look, and we'll continue to work on that.
Jay, on the sizing, you had mentioned at the beginning when you were talking about number of bedrooms at 2 per bedroom plus 2. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you that that's pretty much the standard in the industry. Mm-hmm. All right. Is that you've got a 4-bedroom cabin. It's designed for 8 people in there. And because of hide-a-beds and futons and bringing the kids along, it's 2 extra kids, 2 extra people that you can have.
And there are some counties doing that.
And that's kind of a standard, that's commercially out there in there. I mean, they turn around and have somebody that's got a 3-bedroom cabin that's going to sleep 6 and say, yeah, but we got 6 little kids. Sorry, bring 2 of them. Get another cabin. That's what you do. You get more facilities. You don't pack them in.
Yeah, and we've heard that quite a bit from a county perspective. The thing that's unique with that, though, there's nowhere in code that allows that. That would have to be a change at the state level for sewer system sizing to really allow that +2. Now it might be something in, the lodging code or something like that, but when you look specifically at sewer systems, there's nothing that supports the +2 number of bedroom sizing, even though some counties are already using it. So, that's where we at least found something that we can latch onto in that appendix of 383 for TRH sizing. But I mean, we can, again, I'll look for other examples of other counties that have that within their current ordinances, but I'm fearful of that because it's not specifically laid out in code. It may be the industry standard, it may be commonly occurring, but there's no other words mentioned of it in state statutes or code.
Jay, back to Jenny's question about other counties having ordinances already on the books. I mean, I did that pretty extensively before we even started this whole process of what other counties are doing. I reached out to many of their health departments, the people that are inspectors and kind of in my position, same with zoning as well, because a lot of times in different counties, they have a 2-tier process, kind of which we're hoping to go eventually, but septic's completely different and being overseen by zoning. So I'm losing my point of thought here, sorry. But I've looked at many and talked to many different counties, and they have ordinances, but again, they're not, I guess they're just kind of, they're not based off anything, if you will. And so, yeah, they have them. They maybe haven't been tried, I guess, or challenged. But again, like the +2, that's just a made up figure. And so other counties have looked at implementing monitoring devices on their septic system, how much water they're using. And I don't know if that's the route we would really want to go down. So it's just every county is kind of challenged to come up with their own solution to this. Eric and I went to a meeting with DADCAP down in Eau Claire because they're starting to look now at updating and addressing the lodging code, ATCP 72. And basically we brought up what we're discussing here. And basically it came down to the point that they weren't going to do anything. They're saying it's a DSPS issue. DSPS says it's a ATCP or Department of Ag, Trade and Consumer Protection issue. And those two entities aren't communicating, working together to help us out. So we are tasked to come up with our own solution. And I think like Jay mentioned earlier, other counties are kind of looking towards us to, see what we do. And so I look forward to this challenge and see where we come out. So I do appreciate your time.
And just to follow with what Matt was saying, I reached out to DSPS, is the state agency that I work under, septic codes, asked for guidance regarding septic sizing and occupancy. Mum's the word. So I think their legal counsel informed them that not to give any guidance to the county. So I think we're on our own. I also reached out to Douglas County in Minnesota, talked to one of my counterparts there, and they're struggling to come up with a plan as well. They've implemented many things with inspections and timely paperwork, inspection, just the staff that they have, but they only have like 100 TRHs in their county. So it's the thing to consider with the employees and amount of time that's going to be needed for some of these actions that we're talking about.
Yeah, that's another good point to bring up. I mean, the 563 that we have in Sawyer County, we blow all adjacent counties away, and even some of the other higher tourist counties, we're right there with them. Oneida, Vilas, Polk County, the one that's getting sued. I think when I talked to Jason over there, they had like 150 or 200 identified TRHs. We're double, 2.5 times that. So definitely an issue here for Sawyer County.
I think we want to be very careful though in using other counties and other examples, because if they've never been challenged, it's a wonderful world. But we want to make sure whatever we come up with is, if it does become challenged, because a lot of these folks have enough money to challenge those days of just writing an ordinance and everybody standing behind it. It won't work. So just a cautionary note.
One other thing, I know we've got a pumper on our board, on our committee, then there could be some very good information there from somebody who knows what the pumping standards should be, and maybe that's something we should also consider, annually, that these things need to be pumped and to have a certificate, or, spring and fall or whatever, in order to keep the leach fields, working the way that they should be and not being flooded. So I don't know if that's something we could put on as a future agenda item to try and understand more about the impacts of regular pumping.
And then Jay, what about enforcement? Should that be something that should be separate and we should really start to address? Because I keep hearing Matt talk about, what do we do if they do go in there and they're non-compliant and they continue this? I mean,
Right.
when do we get sheriff in there? And I
Yeah.
mean, where does that go? We should have a solid plan and give it to them, and so they know that we mean business.
Yeah, and there already currently is, a citation process that Matt has on his end. If he identifies that something is non-compliant, he gives the initial warning letter, and he can go through, the court matter as far as citation. But the more, teeth you have in the game there, the more, compliance can be reached. So I think that's another good idea that I'll keep on the list for future agenda items, is kind of an enforcement / citation protocol for something like this. So. And then as the shared screen I have up is kind of looking at future dates, unless there's anything else that we need to discuss, at least for today. Right now, just looking at it, I'm looking at that last week of July as potentially the next meeting date. It at least gives the departmental staff to come up with some of this information. I heard Tuesdays aren't necessarily the best days for some of these committee meetings, for some of the committee members. I guess I'm just, spitballing here as far as, do Mondays work better than other days? Do Wednesdays work better than other days? I don't think anyone really wants to deal with this on a Friday unless it is during the morning, definitely not a Friday afternoon. So, that's really down to Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday morning for that last week of July. Last weeks of the months usually work out pretty well for meeting availability, room availability, because there are not other committee meetings going on. So I would kind of focus towards those last weeks of the month. Again, this is a hybrid virtual type of meeting where if you're not able to be here physically in person, you can attend virtually through the Zoom platform. I guess just looking at what other availabilities that people have. Just throwing it out there.
Monday's not good for me.
Monday's not good. Tuesday's
Monday's
not
not good for me.
great. So what was that one, Martin?
Monday's not good for me.
Okay.
I would propose the 27th, Thursday.
Thursdays? Does that work out for? Do we like kind of a 10 a.m. start on that? Do we want to go earlier? Do you want to go later? 10 a.m.
10 a.m.
Thursday,
is
the
good.
27th?
Yeah, that's good.
Perfect. Well, that was
Sounds
easy.
good.
Yeah, I think it definitely is. I guess the only one that would probably get in the way would be November. Isn't that might be Thanksgiving? No, you'd have the week after that, the 30th. So, yeah, we could do every last Thursday of the month. I would hope. Well, and there might not be, there might be, something that this committee tasks us to do that we can't meet in 1 month because, what you've tasked us to do requires, additional time. So there might not be, it might not be an every monthly meeting. So each meeting will determine our next one, but yes, we'll keep that date available as the last Thursday of the month. Anything else?
Sure. I got one thing real quick, Jay. So besides Matt Dale, was there anybody that's not here virtually or in person?
Yeah, so the two people that weren't able to attend today was Matt Dale and then Gary Nathan. And Gary Nathan is a realtor in the area, and he had a kind of family issue, so he wasn't able to attend. He did reach out to me. Matt Dale, we did have some kind of email trouble with him, so we'll make sure that he's on board for kind of the next meeting and hopefully kind of attend. If there's no other action items or discussion, we're adjourned.